Good afternoon. 3 o'clock having arrived, I am calling the March 30th, 2022 Property Tax Division to order. We're meeting remotely pursuant to Rule 10.01. First order of business is to call the roll. Mr. Peterson.
Chair Youakim.
Present.
Youakim present. Vice Chair Gomez.
All right,
Gomez present.
Gomez present. Representative Hertas.
Hertas present.
Hertas present. Representative Anderson.
Anderson present.
Anderson present. Representative Becker-Finn.
Present.
Becker-Finn present. Representative Fisher.
Fisher present.
Fisher present. Representative Green.
Present.
Green present. Representative Hassan. Representative Hassan. Representative Herr. Representative Herr. Representative Marquardt.
Marquardt present.
Marquardt present. Representative Mortensen.
Mortensen present.
Mortensen present. Representative Pulowski.
Pulowski present.
Pulowski present. Representative Torkelson.
Torkelson present.
Torkelson present. Representative Hassan. And Representative Herr. I see you're in the Zoom, but Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from March 28th, 2022. Can I have a motion from a member to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, I couldn't see who it was. I'm sorry.
Representative Fisher.
Okay, excuse me. Representative Fisher has moved approval of the minutes for March 28th, 2022. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, if we could unmute for a moment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion prevails and the minutes for March 28th, 2022 are adopted. Members, we have one item of business to complete today. We're going to continue to hear public testimony and complete our markup of the division report. Chair Youakim, would you like to move that House File 4064 as amended be re-referred to the Taxes Committee?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Chair Youakim moves that House File 4064 as amended be re-referred to the Taxes Committee. And we'll now move on with the public testimony that we started during our last meeting. First up, Matt Massman. If you could identify yourself briefly for the record, Mr. Massman, and proceed with your testimony. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Gomez and committee members. Thank you, Chair Youakim. Matt Massman, Executive Director of the Minnesota Intercounty Association. We are 15 of the larger and faster growing counties in Minnesota. First of all, I just want to thank Chair Youakim and all of the committee members as you get started with your markup today on putting together another property tax division report. As administrators of the property tax and as committee members, counties know what you know, that the property tax is a system and it's a complex one, and it involves valuations and class rates, exclusions and refunds, all of which fold together to hopefully make that system work. And so we greatly appreciate the work that is being done, although we don't have formal positions on it. Greatly appreciate the work that is being done in House File 4064 to include a mix of pieces of those tools, including the innovative work and the work that's being done on the renter's refund and the homeowner refund as well as the targeted relief for homeowners. We know that targeted relief and state aids, general purpose and otherwise, are all part of that mix. And so we do support as well the homestead market value exclusion that's in the bill. We are in a period certainly of rising property valuations for residential property. And we do anticipate in our hearing that is playing out in terms of tax-based shift onto homeowners. And we think that that will be an important piece of the mix both this year and in the coming years. We also support the adjustments that are being made to the senior deferral program. That is a very important program that helps individuals on fixed incomes to receive relief. And also, I think related to all of this, we also support Article 1, Section 13 that reduces the statewide statutory set interest rate on delinquent property taxes and repurchase agreements by eliminating the outdated 10% floor on interest rate calculations. That 10% floor is well above interest rates, has been for many years, and I think that change is overdue. We also support the increases in general aid, county program aid that are in the bill. We greatly appreciate having a position in the bill, and we will welcome opportunities to work with both the House and the Senate going forward to see if there are opportunities to move that number up. We did testify before the committee recently, so I won't go through that all, but we do feel like county program aid is a critical part of the state and local partnership. And that it has fallen more behind with inflation over the last 20 years. So we will look for opportunities on that. We also support the $22 million that is in both the governor's proposal and this bill. Madam Chair, for the soil and water conservation districts, those are partnerships, as has been said, with county governments. That money doesn't go directly to county governments, but that's very important work for conservation and environmental programs locally, and so we support that funding. Finally, I would just leave you with the property tax system, as I said, is complex. It gets more complex every year, and if there are any opportunities to sort of step back and take a look at that complexity and bring recommendations forward to the legislature for how we can make some adjustments in that in future years, we would happily participate in that effort. And with that, I'll stay for any questions, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Mossman. It's like you're reading our chair's mind on simplifying our classification system. I think that's an interim project that we're excited to dig into. So thanks for volunteering to help us out with that. I just would note before we move on with testifiers that Representatives Hassan and Her have joined the committee. Good to see you guys. Next up, Brad Lundell. Mr. Lundell, if you could identify yourself and proceed with your testimony. Welcome to the committee.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Brad Lundell. I'm the Executive Director of Schools for Equity in Education. There's a letter that was posted that was signed by a number of organizations that also support Article 1, Section 1 of the bill. Those organizations are the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, the Minnesota Rural Education Association, Minnesota Association of School Business Officials, the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, and the Minnesota School Board Association. Really want to thank the committee for tackling the equalization, school levy equalization this year. Representative Hewitt introduced House File 3224. What you see in the bill is a little bit of a variation on the theme that was in that bill, but certainly is welcome by really hiking the equalization factor of the local option revenue. Really delivers a lot of property tax relief to districts throughout the state. Casts a very wide net and really helps out low property wealth districts. Again, I just think there's a couple of things that we want to bring up, and we're willing to work with everybody moving forward as this bill takes shape and as you meet the Senate at some juncture. We did talk about the enhancement of the local option revenue. I know there's jurisdictional issues between education and taxes on that, but that formula has laid flat for the last 8 years or 9 years. And so we were hoping at some improvement there. The other issue, I think the voter approved levies were not, they were not addressed. And because they were not addressed, I think that we're seeing that gap between high and low property wealth districts continue to grow. And addressing the debt service and operating levy equalization factors would have been welcome, but we understand you're working within tight budgets. And again, we just want to continue working on these issues with you as you go forward. I guess also I understand that there's going to be an amendment that will add the cooperative facilities piece that was part of 3224. That's a big equity issue for the cooperative, rural cooperatives, and we hope that that is something that can survive this session. Lastly, I know that when education comes over to property taxes or comes over to the tax committee, there's an arched eyebrow or two, but I've always stressed that the equalization programs do find a comfortable home in the tax committee. folks that property taxpayers that pay city and county and other taxes also pay school taxes. And looking at the school tax burden along with the city and counties in a more unified fashion, I think is something that we welcome, and certainly something that this bill helps address. And so we understand talking about education funding and education tax relief in the tax committee is not standard practice, but I believe that it is appropriate practice. And so with that, I'll stand for any questions that you do have.
Thank you so much for being with us. And just, we want to thank the testifiers for joining us today. Before we begin the markup of the division report, Chair Youakim, would you like to give us some opening remarks?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members. Before we move on to amendments, I'd like to thank our incredible staff for all of their hard work, patience, and professionalism. You make our jobs possible by explaining spreadsheets and statutes and help things run as smoothly as possible in this crazy place. So I'd just like to personally thank from House Research, Jared Swanson, Christopher Clayman, Sean Williams, and Justin Cope. From House Fiscal, Kathy Schill and Cynthia Templin. From our revisor's office, who puts it all together, Maureen Sandy and Evan Powell. And then GOP staff, Kelly Canavati. I'd also like to thank House Information Services for all the work you do to make sure that our work is accessible to everyone. And last but never least, our property tax staff here, Holly Sterk-Bennick, Eric Peterson, and Sean Haydorn. So with that, Madam Chair, I do appreciate the testifiers' comments and that we were able to get them in today. And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and concerns and your willingness to work with our members as we heard bills and put this division report together. We'll continue to work with you as this bill moves into the tax committee. And with that, Madam Chair, I believe we could go to the amendments.
Thank you, Chair Youakim. So we'll now move on to markup of the division report. There's an amendment to House File 4064 as amended. The amendment is coded A4. Madam Chair, would you like to move the A4 amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to move the A4 amendment for committee.
The chair has moved the A4 amendment. Can you briefly tell us what this amendment does?
First, it's basically an author's amendment. I would ask for your support. It contains a few technical corrections around the Tourism Improvement District bill and a suggested clarification to the state auditor's tax increment financing portion. It also contains a provision from Representative Hewitt's equalization bill dealing with the cooperatives that I forgot to include that Mr. Lundell mentioned. It just puts them on equal footing with other cooperatives in the intermediate districts when it comes to accessing the levy. And finally, the same provision that Representative Anderson has in his A1 amendment, I had included as well. I think we were ships crossing in the night on that one, Representative Anderson. So Madam Chair, could I also please have Mr. Jared Swanson from nonpartisan staff walk through the amendment as well?
Sounds good, Madam Chair. Mr. Swanson?
Madam Chair and members, Jared Swanson with House Research. I'm just going to walk through each of the provisions in the A4 author's amendment. I believe there was a House Research memo included in the member packets that has all of this laid out as well. But lines 1.3 through 1.21 of the A4 amendment, along with lines 1.22 through 4.14, add the two new sections that the chair just mentioned around the school provision. So both of these sections would extend certain authority that's available to specific educational cooperative units, to joint powers associations. So this authority would allow the joint powers associations to allocate lease costs and deferred maintenance costs back to their member districts. Lines 4.15 and 4.16 in the A4 amendment contain the clarifying change to the solar energy generating systems provision. That's Article 1, Section 3. And this change just clarifies that the section only applies when the solar energy generating systems on the property have a combined capacity of at least over 1 megawatt. Lines 4.17 through 4.19 contain the TIF changes that the chair just mentioned. Again, these clarify that the paragraph F in that section applies only to district decertifying beginning in 2023. Line 4.20 in the A4 amendment contains a change to the tourism improvement district sections. So this change is for Article 6, Section 4, and it would just conform the definition of impacted business owners with its use throughout the rest of the proposed tourism improvement district chapter. And finally, the last change in the A4 amendment is on line 4.21. And this is another tourism improvement district change. It applies to Article 6, Section 10. And this change would remove a requirement that a petition be filed before an existing tourism improvement district is modified. This change would make Section 10 of Article 6 consistent with Section 7, which requires a petition for some but not all modifications. And Madam Chair, that concludes the overview of the A4 amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Swanson, for explaining that to us. Is there any discussion on the A4 amendment? Sorry, I don't have my little participant thing up. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Lead Hertas is good. Seeing no discussion, Chair Youakim will renew her motion to adopt the A4 amendment. We're going to take a voice vote. If we could all just unmute for a moment. All those in favor of the chair's motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the A4 amendment has been adopted. Chair Youakim, I see that you have an A3 amendment also. Would you like to move your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the A3 amendment before committee.
Chair Youakim moves the A3 amendment before committee. Madam Chair, can you briefly tell us what this amendment does?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I would ask for your support on this amendment as well. These are a variety of corrections that the Department of Revenue suggested that range from technical items to language that will also provide clearer language for implementation. And instead of me trying to stumble my way through this, Madam Chair, I would ask that Mr. Sean Williams from nonpartisan staff walk through this amendment.
Sounds good. Mr. Williams.
Chair Gomez and members, the A3 amendment, as Chair Youakim mentioned, almost all the provisions in that amendment were based on feedback from the Department of Revenue, the administration, and technical implementation of the bill. Most of the changes are technical in nature. There is one substantive change that I'll mention briefly when we get to that point of the bill. So lines 3 through 10 of the bill relate to the property taxes article, so the technical changes related to that section. If members have any questions about those, Mr. Swanson is available to answer questions about specific changes. The remainder of the bill all relates to the property tax refund for renters, specifically the conversion to an income tax credit. There's sort of a number of changes, technical issues that came up in moving the renter's credit out of Chapter 298 into Chapter 290, the income tax chapter. So I'd say that there's not really many substantive changes to how the program will function through this amendment. It's more just a matter of correcting kind of duplicative language, removing some language that was stricken unnecessarily, removing a couple of unnecessary sections. The one section that I would say is substantive in the bill is on page 4.22 of the amendment. That language is new. It's not included in the current renter's credit program, and it requires the Commissioner of Revenue to establish a simplified filing process that a taxpayer could use to claim the renter's credit if that taxpayer typically would not file an income tax return because they do not have an income tax liability. And it sort of gives the Commissioner of Revenue discretion on how to implement that, but it would be essentially establishing a new filing process in a simplified manner for individuals that may claim the renter's credit now but don't file an income tax return because they don't have any income tax liability. If members have any questions about specific provisions in this part of the amendment, I'm happy to answer those. And other than the changes on lines 1.2 through 1.10 or 3 through 1.10, the rest relate to the conversion of the renter's credit to an income tax credit.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Are there any questions for Mr. Williams or for Chair Youakim or discussion on the A3 amendment? Not seeing any. So not seeing any discussion, Chair Youakim renews her motion to adopt the A3 amendment to House File 4064 as amended. We're going to take a voice vote. If we could unmute briefly. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Okay, so we have another amendment to House File 4064 as amendment and as amended, and that amendment is coded A6. Representative Anderson, would you like to move your amendment?
Madam Chair, yeah, I certainly would, except it was included in the original A4 amendment from Chair Youakim. So if I want to do it twice, I'm all for it, but I think it's been taken care of, and I do support it.
Sounds good. I think we're good with once. I
All
don't know about anybody else, but that works for me.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Representative Anderson. Okay, so there's another amendment to House File 4064 as amended, and that amendment is coded A1. Representative Torkelson, did you want to move your amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to move the A1 amendment.
Representative Torkelson moves the A1 amendment. Could you briefly tell us about your amendment, please, Representative?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment came to me from Representative Detmer, actually. It has to do with an exclusion that was passed last year for spouses whose husband or wife, I guess, was in the military and has passed away. There's a property tax exclusion for those spouses. But in the past, that exclusion expired after 8 years. The new exclusion as passed last year does not expire. However, there were a small number of citizens that were affected by the expiration that couldn't get it reinstated, although it was the intent of the author to reinstate that exclusion for those who had been, whose exclusion had been taken away by the expiration date. And this amendment simply puts them back on the list of those excluded properties. And there is no fiscal impact because it's such a small number of citizens involved. I would ask for a green vote, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative Torkelson. Representative Anderson, did you have a question or comment on the amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for Representative Torkelson or staff, if they can answer it. I thought about this yesterday. If a surviving spouse had been taken off the program because of the 8-year expiration and then missed maybe a year or two, and now they can come back on, could they reapply for those theoretically 1 or 2 years they were off the program, or is this just going to start going forward today and not pick up those years they may have missed?
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Representative Torkelson, or do you want us to kick it over to maybe Mr. Swanson?
I think that's a fine idea, Madam Chair.
Sounds good. Mr. Swanson.
Madam Chair and Representative Anderson, the amendment as drafted would only sort of reinstate the exclusion going forward. It wouldn't provide any, retroactive payment for the years that were missed.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Representative Anderson.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Again, this just affects a small number, but I would think maybe at some point we could look at making it retroactive. But again, it's a small number, and I don't have any further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Does anyone else have a question or comment? If not, we'll go to Representative Youakim. Looks like you're up, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I would consider this a friendly amendment. Please vote yes.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, Representative Torkelson renews his motion that we adopt the A1 amendment. We're going to do a voice vote. So if we could unmute for a moment. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No. The motion prevails and the A1 amendment is adopted. All right, there's an amendment to House File 4064 as amended, and the amendment is coded A10. Representative Torkelson, did you want to move the A10?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would move the A10 amendment.
All right, Representative Torkelson moves the A10 amendment. Can you briefly tell us about your amendment, please, Rep. Torkelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment was brought to me by Representative Tice. Deals with the LOST provision for Waite Park. My project was eliminated from the project list because it is a street project. However, we've already kind of broken that barrier with another provision in this bill for the city of Rochester that does fund a street project. After that was noticed, Representative Tice felt it was appropriate that this project be reinserted into the bill, and that is what this amendment does. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Torkelson. Are there any member questions or comments on the A10? I'm not seeing any. Representative Youakim.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Torkelson. Last year, we did incorporate the majority of the local option sales tax request from Waite Park brought forward by Representative Tice, including the costs associated with the regional trail connection and their public safety facility. And you're right, we did not include the 10th Avenue Street project as there was a decision to move away from funding local street projects with the local option sales tax tool, hoping that we can help cities across the state equally by getting a comprehensive transportation bill, which I know you are very much in tune with transportation. Currently in statute, there's also a requirement for a city to submit a city council resolution for a local option sales tax project to the legislature by January 31st of the year a municipality wishes to put the measure on the ballot. It's my understanding that Waite Park did not submit a resolution again this year for the road project nor bill. So I would ask members to vote no on this amendment.
Excellent. Is there any further discussion on the A10 amendment?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I have some experience with, kind of breaking the barrier on some topics similar to this, where if you allow one in, you open the gate for many others. To hold this out for that reason seems a little unusual, in that I'm sure they submitted a resolution originally supporting this. A little surprising that we would use the resolution issue to deny this. Madam Chair, it's a little hard to understand how you can be unbalanced, not unbalanced. I'm trying to think of the right word, but where you let one in and not the other, you start to cause some hard feelings, I'm sure, between Waite Park and Rochester, and we like our cities in Minnesota to get along. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Torkelson. Is there any further discussion on the A10 amendment? I'm not seeing any. So Representative Torkelson renews his motion that we adopt the A10.
Madam Chair, I'd request a roll call on this, please.
Representative Torkelson has requested a roll call on the A10 amendment. I'm not seeing any discussion, so the clerk will take the roll. The chair votes no.
Chair Gomez votes no. Chair Youakim?
No.
Chair Youakim votes no. Lead Hertas?
Yes.
Lead Hertas votes aye. Representative Anderson?
Anderson, aye.
Anderson votes aye. Representative Becker-Finn?
No.
Becker-Finn votes no. Representative Fisher?
Fisher, no.
Fisher, no. Representative Green?
Yes.
Green votes aye. Representative Hassan?
No.
Hassan votes no. Representative Herr?
No.
Herr votes no. Representative Marquardt?
Marquardt votes no.
Marquardt votes no. Representative Mortensen? Representative Mortensen? Representative Pawlowski?
Pawlowski, no.
Pawlowski votes no. Representative Torkelson?
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson votes aye. Representative Mortensen? Representative Mortensen? Madam Chair, there's 4 ayes and 8 nays.
There being 8 ayes and 4 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. Finally, we have an amendment to House File 4064 as amended. The amendment is coded A2. Representative Hertaus, would you like to move your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do move the A2 amendment to House File 4064 as amended.
Representative Hertaus has moved the A2 amendment to House File 4064 as amended. Representative Hertaus, can you briefly tell us about your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A2 amendment is the addition of a formula change to the LGA provisions within the bill. Madam Chair, this is a subject that I have been involved with for more than 20 years regarding the distribution of local government aid to the 854 some cities that we have in Minnesota. As Chair Marquardt knows, I've worked on this issue for a number of years in the property tax division. And in trying to come up with a fair and equitable distribution with regard to local government aid, it was about 3 years ago that we finally kind of struck on something that seemed to be gaining some traction. Worked with Ms. Dalton before she retired, Ms. Schill and Ms. Templin, I think, were also involved. And so we worked very hard to come up with, basically, I would call it a safety net. And I introduced this bill, which you heard me talk about it before. I guess I would like to emphasize to members that in the spirit of One Minnesota, we are all contributing as citizens and our respective communities to the state general fund. This formula change creates some predictability with regard to local government units being able to actually plan LGA as part of their budgets. Many communities find it difficult to do just that. When you look at the runs and the distributions of LGA all across the state, you find some pretty striking disparities for communities that are similar in size, similar in needs, maybe not meeting the metrics of the current formula, but nonetheless have needs. And you see per capita distributions from 0, which is the case of 112 cities, to distributions or per capita that exceeds $500. I like to use one community. I will leave it unnamed for the sake of it in the Iron Range of Minnesota, but very similar in population to community here in Hennepin County. And the differences are quite striking. The population is different by 12 people. The geographic areas are similar. But what we have is a municipal budget in the Iron Range that's about $3 million able to fund their government, of which nearly half of it is provided by local government aid, versus a community in Hennepin County that's budget is half of that, and it is not funded at all. So what the amendment does is creates a safety net for all cities, brings predictability to the formula, and merely captures as an alternative formula 2% of the total appropriation. Now, in the bill I introduced, and I discussed this with Chair Youakim, I've always recognized that the resistance to doing this would come from the remaining 750 cities who think that they're going to get a little less as a result of this. So the opportunity to do this existed a couple of years ago when we made an increase in appropriation to LGA, which would have held any other city harmless from receiving less LGA. And the opportunity does exist again this year. In my bill, I introduced or included additional appropriation in this amendment, and I was told that there's not money to do it, which I find difficult to believe. But anyway, that being said, in the amendment, I have no appropriation, but revert back to the 2%. So that's really the bill or the amendment in a nutshell. It provides, as I mentioned, stability and security for all the communities in Minnesota. And of these 112 cities that are off formula right now, the work that was done the stakeholder group over the summer. It is an improvement. It's a movement in the right direction, but it doesn't solve the problem entirely. It dealt with about half of the communities. And my concern, Madam Chair, is that over time, in failing to seize this opportunity to right the ship, we're going to see increased numbers of communities off formula. And lastly, for those communities that are on the borderline of going off formula, what this does is, again, provide added security and comfort in knowing that if they should fall off the formula, they fall into the alternative formula as proposed. So with that, Madam Chair, I renew my amendment, the A2 amendment to House File 44 as amended. And Madam Chair, I do request a roll call.
Representative Hertas has requested a roll call, so we will do that once it's time to vote on the amendment. Thank you, Rep. Hertas. Looking for member questions or discussion. First up is Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Gomez. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Representative Hertas, for continuing the discussion in this area. The concern I have is, while we've mentioned that all cities have needs, what I feel much more comfortable with is seeing the dollars tied to a particular need out there. When we're just doing it by the population, there are some communities, well, they all have needs. It's nice to see it targeted towards specific needs. And it just gets me very uncomfortable in this type of situation, because there are some cities out there where they have trouble meeting their very basic needs because they are property, their property taxes are poor. They don't have the same resources, and their needs are greater than other cities. And when they're struggling to make their basic, to meet the basic things out there that other cities are able to do, and they're able to get then local government aid on top of that, so they are able to do things that these other cities that struggle with, I get very uncomfortable with that. Just doing it based on population and feel much more comfortable by looking at needs. Have you looked at trying to find a need that you would be able to tie this to versus just by population? Because I just am really uncomfortable without it being tied to a specific need.
Thank you. Representative Hertas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Rep. Fisher, for that introduction to the common, restated over and over and over again issue of needs. And if suburban communities that are off formula, and it's not just solely suburban communities, probably half of those that are off formula are suburban communities. But if there weren't needs, we wouldn't be seeing all these TIF bills coming in asking for variations to use and capture increment outside of the district. We wouldn't be seeing all these local option sales tax presentations being there. The metric in which there are needs, one of the things that I've probably have inadequately explained over the years is many of these communities have very few rooftops, very few household incomes to foot the bill. Unlike the larger communities that have multiple households, multiple families, multiple household incomes to share the burden. And yet they are getting local government aid because of the metrics that have been long established decades ago. So we make efforts to improve the formula, but there ought to be a safety net. And I remind you that in the beginning, this was distributed and it was sold to Minnesota taxpayers as part of the Minnesota Miracle, that wealth would be shared with every community, and it was distributed on a per capita basis. So this 2%, 2 cents out of every dollar, is a modest thank you for doing your part in supporting a program called local government aid. That 2% that would be redistributed to those 112 cities represents approximately 27% of the state's population. Those same communities are contributing to the state general fund in the form of state general levy, in the form of income taxes, in the form of sales taxes, in the form of fiscal disparities. And so you asked, what is the need? What is the need factor? And probably the best one might be low population. But anyway, you know, this has been a multi-year effort. It first came to my attention 20 years ago in local government. And it's been something I've given a lot of thought to over 2 decades. Finally, the opportunity 4 years ago to do something about it, and an opportunity again. So with that, members, I would ask for your support, and I do renew my motion for a vote.
Thank you, Representative Hertas. Representative Youakim, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Representative Hertas for working on this, but also being really willing to work on the LGA formula this fall with myself and the stakeholders. The stakeholders that I keep talking about were all the city groups, the League of Minnesota Cities, the Association of the Greater Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities, small cities. They all got together. They worked with our nonpartisan staff to look at to updating the need-based formula. They went through 40 different regression models. A lot of work was put in, and folks are really happy with the results. We're moving. It's a updated calculation of need and rebase the formula. You'll see cities now moving off of it, off the formula, or let me see, I have these stats here. I really suggest people look at the city runs in their packets. You will notice that about 75% of the cities, if not more, I think you can count on 2 hands how many cities outside the metro area do not receive local government aid, and some of them are moving back on. Most of the cities that don't receive local government aid and aren't being affected by the formula are high income, fast growing, high commercial industrial area, or growing high income in the suburbs. We have over almost 20 cities that are coming back on formula or not losing as much. And it would have been an even better shift if we could have put more money to it. And that's my concern with this, is if we set this 2% aside, it might be fine when we have money now, but as we move forward, it's going to shift money away from the cities that truly have that need-based. And I know we've worked with the need-based formula for over 35 years. When LGA was first put in, Representative Hertas is right. It was on a per capita basis, but it was a way to share a brand new sales tax, state sales tax that we never had, to put it out through per capita. That didn't last long. They decided, if we're going to shift this into the general fund, we really have to look at need-based formula. So I would like, to continue to work on this. If we could get more money into LGA, that might be an uphill battle in the Senate. I'd like to get more money into CPA too, which also might be an uphill battle. But I think this is a really, really good place to start. And when you can get all these groups together to agree on a formula change, I think that is where we should go to honor all the work that they did in our nonpartisan staff. But we'll continue to talk to Representative Hertas about it. But today, members, I'd ask for a no vote.
Thank you, Representative Youakim. Just checking to see if there's any further discussion on the A2 amendment before we move to the roll call vote. Representative Hertas.
Thank you, Chair Youakim, for those comments. That is correct, but my take on the stakeholder involvement was not any direct and overt opposition to what we're proposing. And maybe you have a different perception, but I didn't get that as a pulse, that they were unwilling to look at recognizing that all of the communities should be recognized, at least in this minimal way, as getting a thank you for their contribution to the program, the first part. I'd also like to reemphasize, although metrics may suggest that certain communities have higher incomes, again, I direct you back to having few rooftop to fund local government and local school districts. And so the burden is real. And conversely, if we have in the past, as Chair Marquardt has often reminded me, that LGA buys down property taxes, we have in many of the suburban areas that aren't receiving LGA have land use limitations imposed upon them by another regional governance called the Med Council that prevent communities from developing the way they want to. And that being said means that you have extraordinarily expensive, high-value land underneath each of those rooftops is burdened with paying the bill. And so it artificially looks as though this is a wealthy community, but you 5 or 10 acres of expensive Hennepin County land under each rooftop because that's the requirement. And you have a disproportionate burden on few households and families. So that's been one of my major disappointments with the Lga formula. I've repeated this over and over, but in the minority, it falls on deaf ears. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Chair votes no.
Vice Chair Gomez votes no. Chair Youakim?
No.
Chair Youakim votes no. Lead Hertas?
Yes.
Lead Hertas votes aye. Representative Anderson?
Anderson, aye.
Anderson votes aye. Representative Becker-Finn?
No.
Becker-Finn, no. Representative Fisher?
Fisher, no.
Fisher, no. Representative Green?
Yes.
Green votes aye. Representative Hassan?
No.
Hassan votes no. Representative Herr?
No.
Herr votes no. Representative Marquardt?
Marquardt votes no.
Marquardt, no. Representative Mortensen?
Yes.
Mortensen, aye. Representative Plowski?
Pulaski, no.
Plowski, no. Representative Torkelson?
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Madam Chair, that's 5 ayes and 8 nays.
There being 5 ayes and 8 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. So I messed up, I think, reading off the results of the previous, of the A10 amendment where a roll call was requested. So I'm just going to clarify. I'm sorry. I've never done this part before. So the vote the vote count on the A10 amendment was 8 noes and 4 yeses. So that motion also did not prevail. Thanks for your indulgence. So we have reached the end of our amendments. Members, if anybody has questions or comments about House File 4064 as amended, now's the time for that. Not seeing any hands so far. Representative Marquardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to find my raise my hand button, so sorry about that. So, Madam Chair and Representative Youakim, thank you for bringing this bill forward. Thank you for your leadership and all the committee members. This is huge property tax cuts. That's a big issue out there right now, and this bill provides a huge amount of property tax cuts. And the total amount is about $612 million over the next biennium, 24-25, and about $550 million of that, or about $275 million a year, is direct dollar for dollar property tax cuts. And I think that is the largest property tax cut bill since 2001 by far. And that's a big deal. I mean, property taxes hit you regardless of your income. It's, if you happen to lose an income or lose a spouse that had an income, you still have those property taxes. That doesn't change. It's very regressive. It really hits a lot of folks, and it hits our families, our single parent families, our seniors especially. And one of the big things for reform this year is placing the renter's refund onto the income tax credit. And I don't think I can overstate the impact that's going to have on truly helping people. And that's what I think we should do with these bills, is how can we truly make a difference in people's lives? How can we, move the dial for folks? And this really does. For example, almost 50% of the households for single parents, families, are rentals. It's like 46%. That is going to be huge for those single parents. And senior citizens, well, they represent 16% of our population. According to the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, 30% of seniors and those with disability get the renter's credit. And in 20 of our rural counties, that percent of those who are seniors and those that are that have disability, in 20 of our rural counties, it's over 50%. That's huge. This is going to make a difference, and people, a lot of them living paycheck to paycheck, would make a huge difference. And I just, again, kind of want to go over some numbers. I mean, by putting this on the income tax form and moving from household income to adjusted gross income, of the over 300,000 renters who are currently on, it's going to be about an increase of $127. And then for 120,000 renters really qualify, but they're eligible, but they're not taking it right now. 120,000 are going to see an increase of an average of $711. And by moving to household AGI, 36,000 more. And we're talking again, senior citizens, talking single parents, 36,000 more are now going to qualify who don't qualify before because their income is going to get lower because you're taking away the household income at an average of $411. I mean, that is significant. And, you know, you add that with the amount that goes into local government aid and county program aid. Back in 2003, when the certified amounts to local government aid were $587 million. And in 2003, the legislature, I didn't support it, but cut local government aid by $150 billion. I said, you know what? I'm not going to quit this place until we at least get back up to that $587 million. And this bill gets to, with a $34 million increase, to $598 million, the highest local government aid amount in its 51-year history. So this, and you know, there's taxes for farmers, the ag to credit. I think there's about a total of $25 million direct dollar for dollar cuts for farmers. That's about 4% of the total property taxes there. And we got equalization. So this is a strong bill. This is the biggest property tax cut proposal we've seen in over 20 years in the legislature. And it's a bill that is truly going to make a difference. It's not just unfocused. This is going to make a real difference in people's lives. So Chair Youakim, thank you for putting this together. Appreciate the members for all their work on this. And it's a good bill, and I certainly deserve strong support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Marquardt. Next up, Representative Torkelson.
Madam Chair, sorry about my feeble fingers, having a hard time finding the right buttons. I apologize for that. Madam Chair, just a couple of comments. Too many electronics in the room, I'm afraid. A couple of comments regarding the spending in this bill. If the bill author would yield for a question.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can just have conversation in committee, I think, but she's.
All right, well, it's, you know, this virtual stuff is a little hard to know.
True.
You know, it's a little hard to read each other's body language when we're all on a screen. Anyway, Chair Youakim, this bill is big. It involves significant amount of resources being allocated to property tax work and other portions of the bill. Chair Youakim, do you have a target from leadership for this?
Chair Youakim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Torkelson, I was given some money from the tax chair to spend. So it's about, as you see in the bottom line of the spreadsheet, it's about 400 million in 2023 and 600 million in ongoing spending.
Representative Torkelson?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'll take that as a yes, that you did have a target. Then I guess my next question will go to the tax chair. Representative Marquardt, or do we have targets? Is that how we're approaching this work this session?
Representative Marquardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Torkelson. So I also got asked this question today in tax committee. So when we release the tax bill and post it on Monday, there will be a number for 22-23 and a number for 24-25. I will say that a resolution, however, that would set targets will come after that date. So as far as a resolution, there is nothing that defines targets, but we will have numbers out. Well, you see the number for property tax right now, but on Monday, you'll also see a number out for taxes.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Representative Marquardt. So Representative Marquardt, did you just make up your own target then? Is that how we're doing business this year?
Representative Marquardt.
Madam Chair and Representative Torkelson, no, there are parameters right now. I'm just saying that there's not been an official resolution. So right now we have guidance, and you'll see those numbers on Monday.
Well,
Representative Torkelson, I
thank
think
you.
we've answered that part of the question. If you had another
Madam
comment
Chair,
or question that you wanted to make, that would be fine.
I
Representative
will just make
Torkelson.
a comment, Madam Chair.
Sounds good.
I keep hearing about the need for transparency around here, and this seems to lack transparency. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Marquardt and Chair Youakim.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Youakim, for bringing the bill forward. I think there's some really great things in the bill. One of the big things I'd like to say a big thanks on is, first of all, the dollars that are going in to address the needs of the soil and water conservation districts. Having that $22 million out there so that the districts can rely on that on an ongoing basis instead of every couple of years having to wonder, are we going to get that money or not? And these are the people that do the boots on the ground that go out there to help make sure that they're working with willing partners to improve our water quality throughout the state of Minnesota. So I've got my water hat on here, so I want to call that out and say thank you for taking part of your target and putting it in there. It's been something that we've been trying to address for years. So thank you for doing that. The next thing I want to comment on is it's based on an email that I received from one of my constituents. Currently, they are in a situation that they're retired, they're on a fixed income with Social Security, and currently they don't pay any Minnesota taxes or any federal taxes at all. And one of the things that they had mentioned is that, because they're on a fixed income, one of the things that they take a look at is what's going to happen down the road with rental credits, because, there just isn't that equity there. And I think what we have done to address the renter's credit in there helps people in these kind of situations. We've got many of our senior population who, as they've gotten older, who've sold their homes and have had to move into rental situations. And when you take their look in the rental situations, they already are exempt from paying federal or Minnesota income tax. So the only way that we can really help them with their taxes is increasing that renter's credit. When we take a look as how much, they're on the fixed income, they're lower incomes. This is the way to be able to bring that equity back in that helps them, help them meet their things when their expenses as they're going forward. So I want to say thank you for the huge investment. I mean, this is a game changer what you've done there. I want to say a big thank you. I know my constituents who are fixed incomes and renters out there who are retired are going to be very appreciative of it. So I want to call that out and say a great big thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fisher. Up next, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of comments on the bill, and this kind of comes from my ag side, I guess, and I echo the comments of Representative Fisher. We've been trying for years to get to stable, dependable funding for our 87 SWCDs. This bill does that. I'm very appreciative of that, as are the SWCDs. We're going to see some good work coming out of that. Also, the farm to school credit, Representative Marquardt's been working on that for years as well. I believe it's 60% this year, 70% next year, and then up to 85% of taxes payable in 2024. That's going to be much appreciated by farmers as we face rising inflated costs this year. It's going to help some of the cash flows moving ahead. I do have a concern on the renters credit program. we're putting a lot of money into that area here in the property tax division report. And that program is already on autopilot. It's adjusted for inflation every year, so it's going up on its own. And then adding a significant amount to it this year, I think that program is getting heavily funded, and maybe some of that money could have gone into some other areas to do some other work for county program aid, for example. I also appreciate the work done on levy equalization. It's going to help our school districts, especially those as well, throughout the state and in greater Minnesota. So all in all, I appreciate the positive aspects of the bill, and also wonder about this year and in the tails. It's going to cost us about $1 billion. But some good parts in the bill, and some parts of the bill that I question, but all in all, I'm going to be voting in favor of the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Next up, and if I just could, there is an expense to what we're doing with the renter's credit, but that expense is because people who are currently eligible are not able to take advantage of it. So that is money that those renters are due. But because of the complication of the way that our system is working right now, they don't participate. So I just wanted to mention that. I know it's a big item on our spreadsheet, but it really is just about making our tax system more efficient so that people can get the refunds for the property tax that they pay, that they're entitled to. So thank you. Representative Hertas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if anybody else wanted to speak, I just thought I'd do wrap up. Maybe you want to ask if anybody else wants to say something. Otherwise, we'll go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see anybody else. I had you right before our chair, actually. So you're good to go.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And members, I want to thank you for your careful thought and consideration about some of the Republican proposals and ideas that we put forth. I think I'd like to particularly make mention of an extraordinary relationship that I have not seen or participated in here in the last 10 years, and that is the good working relationship of Chair Youakim. She and I have had regular weekly meetings. We have more in common than we thought we did when we first started this process. Maybe part of that was attributable to my growing up in the Hopkins area. But nonetheless, I want to thank her for her very good working relationship and congeniality with regard to issues and good, healthy, and vigorous discussions that we've had offline as we prepare for each weekly meeting. Members, I appreciate each one of you, even on the other side of the aisle, and appreciate your thoughtful input and discourse that we've had during the course of this division committee. I also want to thank Polly Circumvenk and Kelly Cavanati, both the CA and our lead in our researcher, and of course staff, Ms. Schill and Ms. Templin and Mr. Clayman, Swanson and Williams. I'm sure I've missed a few other people. And I really miss some of the people who have retired, like Mr. Michaels and and Ms. Dalton and some of those people as well. And I'm sure you do too, Chair Rookwood. Members, this bill has a lot of good things in it, and I'm grateful for the things that are in it. Unfortunately, I think one of the questions I've been asking for some time as well, and I've been asking the tax chair on the floor, what are the targets? That's been a very elusive and evasive question. It would be so much more constructive for all of us to be working together bipartisanly, and I think this is a committee that tends to be one of the most nonpartisan committees in terms of taking care of the people's business. But it would be so much more useful to know some numbers and know how we can work together and have a balanced approach to putting together a vision report. My view of this, as it comes late in the spreadsheets that were supplied to us that we're spending $1 billion. $1 billion is a lot of money, and I feel it's not very well balanced, that most of it has been put into one form of relief. It could have been more evenly distributed. I'm disappointed about the lack of state general levy reform or business tax relief. Bills have been introduced, not referred to this division, not heard. And that's a disappointment given that we're coming off the heels of this pandemic and difficulties that businesses have endured. I've heard not only in this committee, but in the tax committee, and a lot of reticence about big, bad, evil corporations and about all the wealthy people. I just want to remind members of this committee that 47% of all Minnesotans work for small business, defined as under 20 people. That's something that's notable because small business is considered to be the economic engine of our state. Big corporations has been vilified. They have the luxury and the ability to transfer their business or close an office and do business across state lines. But our small businesses are the ones who they've got their business, their property, their investments are here in Minnesota. Maybe that's unfortunate that sometimes we get people viewing that as taking hostages, if you will, and that taxes are what they are, and if you don't like it, leave. That's not real easy for a lot of small businesses, and we should be doing everything we can do to have a healthy and vibrant private sector so that we have a healthy and vibrant sector. County program aid, not enough. There's a situation when you compare it to LGA, where all 87 counties get county program aid. They apparently have needs, but we don't have it in the form of formula. Enough said. There's my dig. The Soil and Water Conservation District, that's a good thing. You've got it. And the funding for it is offering some predictability. And that was historic given the number of years that I've been here. There's just really been no money. So all in all, the bill accomplishes some things. I have provisions in it. My biggest disappointment is a failure to get the Lga formula change into the bill. I think that we'll get that much money program aid. I hope we can in the future see more funding and see some reforms in that area. But overall, I guess I'm viewing for all of the shortcomings that I feel there are, that's been kind of an unbalanced approach in terms of how the money and $1 billion of taxpayer treasure is being allocated. For that reason, I'm going to tell you that this bill is going nowhere with regard to the Senate. And I don't suspect that our tax bill will be going anywhere, but I will make a commitment to my friends on the other side that I will work hard with my colleagues in the Senate, in the majority, to see if we can't get a tax. I've already been arranging meetings to have just types of discussions. With that, I'm going to encourage a no vote on the bill. And I think Chair Youakim and members, my members, and all the staff and members on the other side of the aisle, it's been a great, quick 3 months that we've plowed through in the Property Committee. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Hertaus. For final comments, Chair Youakim.
Thank you, members. One of the major tasks that we have in this division is to make sure that our property tax system has a sense of fairness and equity. We still have a long way to go to do that. We do this by trying to carefully craft policy as well as providing aids and credits to Minnesotans. In this bill, we do invest in property tax refund program, update the homestead exclusion to current housing values, adjust the targeted property tax credit to reach more folks, and make sure that the senior deferral program is much more accessible, particularly proud about moving those years down from 15 to 5 as their seniors downsize so they can still access the tool. We do all this to provide homeowners across the state with money to offset a portion of their local property taxes that are rising due to increased market values. I'm sure you've all been getting your statements this week, and the ever-changing needs of our local governments. We make a transformational investment to Renter's Credit Program that will reach people in every county and municipality across the state, including many of our seniors who are asking for property tax relief. In over 20 of our counties, 50% of those who receive this credit are seniors or people with disabilities. And as Vice Chair Gomez said, this makes it more efficient and accessible for our folks. Another important part of this bill is the work we do to update the Lga formula to make sure it is truly measuring a city's need and delivering monetary assistance to provide basic city services to Minnesotans. We also do increase the county program aid to 87 counties, support our school districts with levy equalization for those counties that have lower property values. This bill also provides tax increment financing flexibility to our cities, has provisions that address local option sales tax that we will continue to try to streamline and compress so that it's more equitable across the state. And we make some adjustments in a few of the lodging taxes. Members, this is a good bill. It has something for everyone to like. It provides permanent tax cuts to Minnesotans in every one of our communities and puts money back into their pockets at a time when they need it the most. It's also providing flexibility and funding to our cities and counties. More importantly, behind each one of those numbers on the spreadsheets we always look at are people that we've been sent here to serve, and members, I ask for your support.
And with that, Chair Youakim renews her motion that House File 4064 as amended be re-referred to the Taxes Committee. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Youakim.
Aye.
Chair Youakim votes aye. Vice Chair Gomez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gomez votes aye. Lead Hertas.
Hertas votes no.
Lead Hertas votes no. Representative Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Anderson votes aye. Representative Becker-Finn.
Aye.
Becker-Finn, aye. Representative Fisher.
Fisher, aye.
Fisher, aye. Representative Green.
No.
Green, no. Representative Hassan.
Hassan, aye.
Hassan, aye. Representative Herr.
Her, aye.
Herr, aye. Representative Marquardt.
Marquardt, aye.
Marquardt, aye. Representative Mortensen.
Mortensen, no.
Mortensen, no. Representative Pulaski.
Pulaski, aye.
Pulaski, aye. Representative Torkelson.
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Madam Chair, that is 10 ayes and 3 nays.
There being 10 ayes and 3 nays, the bill is re-referred to the Taxes Committee. And with that, I will hand the virtual gavel back to Chair Youakim.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gomez, and I want to thank you for so capably, as always, stepping in when we need you and for your partnership through this. As I said before, we still have a long way to do to make our tax system more equitable. This is our last scheduled meeting of the session. It always makes me a little sad. Again, a big thank you to staff and to members for all their work over the last few months. And I would like to thank Representative Hertas as well for the collaboration and the weekly meetings and for being willing to just talk and discuss and sometimes vigorously discuss things, and for your professionalism and work ethic. Did you want to make any further comments before we close out?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Representative Hertas, did you want to make any further comments?
No, I don't have anything more to say other than to thank you again and Chair Marquardt and members of the Democrat caucus. It's been fun working with you. I know we all have principles, and I think we've certainly don't always agree on ideologies, but we've had some good, vigorous discussions, and I appreciate that, and I respect each of you for that. And I want to also thank members of my caucus for their input during the course of this last 3 months.
Thank you, Representative Hurtas. Members, any other questions or comments before we adjourn? Seeing none, we are adjourned.